What was I thinking sending these 15 books in for a CGC 9.8 pre-screen? Hey there, today I have a CGC unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up these 15 comic books that I submitted to CGC for a 9.8 pre-screen. Now, I was going through the list of the books that I submitted, and I started to question really why I sent these books specifically off to CGC, and the only thing I can say is that I think I have been leaning really heavily on my spreadsheet analysis to kind of make these decisions for me. But when I was looking at the titles and the issues, I don't know if these specifically need to be graded by CGC. So I think that this will be something that I think about as I go through this unboxing, and maybe you can kind of play along here with me as far as like, would you submit this book at all? There's part of me that certainly looks at brand new books, recently released books, modern comic books. There's part of me that feels like if I can very easily recognize a 9.8 candidate or a book that's worthy of going through the 9.8 pre-screen, then I should send the book in and preserve the grade as I think it should be. But I think as we've learned over certainly the last couple of years, where you have the kind of the idea or the question about should every book be graded. Not every single book should be, of course, but in some cases you kind of want to preserve the grade. But there has to be some aspect of the book that makes it worth grading just beyond the condition. And that's actually something that's kind of difficult for me to admit. For me personally, as a comic book collector, comic book condition is one of the most important aspects of the book itself. After you get past the story, creators, and kind of what makes a comic book, but from a collector's perspective, it's about condition. You want the highest grade possible. You want books that will age well, that the paper quality is high, and it's something I think about, but part of what I'm trying to understand is, do I sometimes get blinded by condition? Like, there are aspects of collecting that really draw people to the hobby that sometimes maybe shouldn't, in a way. Certainly value is something, right? If that's all you think about is value, then that may not sustain your enjoyment. There has to be other aspects of the hobby that you do enjoy, so that value is just something that kind of comes along with the hobby. And I think that for me, condition is one of those that I prioritize that so highly that sometimes I get so thrilled and excited to unpack a shipment of books, and I see a book that this book looks gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's crispy corners and completely flat and spine tick free. And I'm so excited that I'll put it in a queue to kind of check and make sure that, this is a book that I should send off to CGC and run it through a 9.8 pre-screen. And in order to kind of deal with those emotions, I've been relying on the data. But sometimes the data will only kind of show maybe a very minor positive output when I'm evaluating fair market values versus all the costs, pre-screen, shipping, and all of these things. Where if all I'm doing is looking at data, values, and condition, but I'm also not thinking about what makes this book unique, what makes it special, is it sort of just like a common book? Then that's where it becomes a little trickier and challenging to figure out which books should be sent in. So something to think about as I open these. I think there's a lot of really great books in here, great covers, interesting, recently released, like within the last several months, books that maybe even values aren't really quite out on the market yet. It's a really nice mix of books. So I'm going to get to the unboxing. It's a complete 9.8 pre-screen. I did not look at these grades beforehand, so I don't know how many of these 15 books ended up a 9.8, if any were rejected, and so forth. So let me get this open up so we can find out. All right, this is interesting. There are rejects in here. So that's not the interesting part. I think the interesting part is about half of these books were rejected. That is not typical of the 9.8 pre-screen submissions. that I typically do, and actually plays into kind of my working theory around should these books have been submitted for 9.8 pre-screen at all. So I want to get to this unboxing and go through the books rather quickly and get to the rejects, because this is really interesting to me that this has happened. I normally do not send books for a 9.8 pre-screen to kind of test things out. Like, the books that I send in should be 9.8s. The 9.8 pre-screen service that I use, it really is more insurance, meaning these books don't have value in a 9.6 or less, so there's not a lot of point to grade it. I'd rather have them raw and deal with them raw instead of have them graded at a lesser grade. So the fact that there were so many books rejected with this is really interesting to me. And I kind of want to see which books were rejected, if these are sort of some of the common issues, or I don't know yet. I just want to get the unboxing and show you the books that I did send in. The first one is the Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars Facsimile Edition. This will look great, kind of like if you're thinking about creating a display of nostalgic books as facsimiles, and a lot of people collect facsimiles as a 9.8. So pretty cool to have Secret Wars #1, the facsimile edition, graded in a 9.8. Next is Batman 142. This is the third print. This is the first issue of Joker Year 1. Kind of picked up some heat and actually got all the way up to a third printing. And at first I was confused by this cover. This is actually the cover A, cover art. But for the third printing, they just changed the coloring to make it the Joker colors, which I thought aesthetically was pretty cool, which is why I sent it in. Didn't quite realize when I first saw it that it's actually the bat symbol here in green. But Batman number 142, the Joker Year 1, Part 1, in a 9.8. Next is Batman's Grave #8. This is actually from 2020, the variant cover by Raphael Grandpa. And I specifically picked up this book for the Grandpa cover art because I thought it was super cool. And I held on to this book for quite a long time. I don't typically go through my short boxes and just randomly pick out books and say, hey, I should submit this to CGC. I'm usually much more analytical than that. This book was actually in a bin that I had marked for grading, that I was just kind of backlogged in my own screening and grading. And I think this book just kept getting pushed to the back of the box. And eventually I got caught up and remembered when I picked this book up and thought it was great, and was quite surprised and taken by the condition, which again is sometimes it's a trigger for me. And I just thought, well, this book is just in such great shape, I should send it in and preserve it. And I do love this cover. Great artwork by Raphael Grandpa. Batman's Grave #8 from DC Comics from September 2020. Okay, next one is Duke #1. This is a recently released book. This is from late 2023. This is the new Skybound Energon universe. Really do love this new iteration of G.I. Joe and Transformers stories. I'm excited about the crossover. And what's great about some of these miniseries is there's a lot of like character introductions or reintroductions into the Energon universe. And I think they've done a really good job of not like over advertising or overhype these introductions. So these characters will just sort of appear as all of the stories progress. You never know when some of these characters showing up, if that's going to be significant, their first Energon appearance. We don't quite know yet how that's going to play out. But another book that I really felt like was really strong in terms of condition and wanted to get that preserved, Duke #1 in a 9.8. Next is Miles Morales Spider-Man #15. This is the Wolverine homage cover to Web of Spider-Man 32, one of my favorite Spider-Man covers of all time. This one I thought was really well done. Cover art by Ken Lashley on this one, but really not much more to say about it other than the Web of Spider-Man 32 homage. This particular variant series, if you will, this was celebrating the 50 years of Wolverine, so Wolverine showed up on a bunch of covers. So I thought this was really interesting. The one thing I don't like is, I don't like necessarily when there's like a character on a book that doesn't necessarily belong, or it's a little confusing. So this is a Web of Spider-Man, a Peter Parker homage cover featuring Wolverine on a Miles Morales Spider-Man book, but I felt like I had to do it because I do love that cover. All right, next up is Harley Quinn number 38. Okay, I'm glad this one was not rejected because this cover I think is just awesome. This was an open order cover art by Souza Micah. I just loved it. I love the facial expression. To me, it's just a great like personality cover of Harley. You have the red, white, and black color scheme. It just sort of, for me, thought was a perfect fit for Souza Micah's style. I first got to know her art where she was doing variants on Catwoman, and when I saw she did this variant for Harley Quinn, I had to have it, and I think I ended up getting multiple copies of it. It was open order, and that probably should have been probably at least a 1 in 25 retailer incentive. I thought it was great. Here is Deadpool number 1, very timely as the Deadpool and Wolverine movie is almost upon us. This one's going to be hard to see. It is a foil. I'm disappointed it didn't get the 9.9. I thought all foils are 9.9. But this was just an awesome In-Hyuk Lee cover. This was a variant to the latest Deadpool series, first released in early 2024. And I remember seeing this on the pre-order list, and I was like, this is just a absolutely great In-Hyuk Lee cover on Deadpool number 1. So glad I was able to get that in a 9.8. And I've got a couple more to go. This is Poison Ivy number 21. Another open order variant, not an incentive. Babs Tarr on cover art. Really thought this was just a great close-up of Poison Ivy. And Babs Tarr has done a number of very interesting covers in her career. And I believe that this one too, certainly it was a book that I wanted to send in because of the condition, and I'm glad it ended up getting a 9.8. But also it had had some recently reported 9.8 sales of the book being high enough that it was worth sending through this process. All right, the last one is Ultimate Spider-Man number 1. This is the Ryan Stegman variant cover, the Parker family cover. It was another open order, not an incentive, a book that I had pre-ordered. I still don't understand why I had pre-ordered several Ultimate Spider-Man books and did not pre-order cover A. I talk about that every time I open up a shipment with Ultimate Spider-Man books in it that I did pre-order or purchase, and I still don't have a cover A. I think I have almost every other cover other than cover A, which is interesting. But like that one with the family on the cover saying Happy Holidays. All right, that was 9 CGC 9.8s out of 15. Very disappointed in myself. I want to look at the rejects. The trouble with the rejects is even if I look at them, they don't include grader notes or anything. It's not going to tell you specifically, or there's not going to be some sort of indicator or post-it note with a note on it, or some sort of like arrow pointing to the defect. It's just going to say rejected. But you can at least look at the books that I sent in, and kind of the theme or premise of this unboxing is like, would you have even sent these books in 9.8 or not? Like, are they worth grading? All right, so let's take a look at these. And it's funny, on the back of my backing boards, I always write the grade up on the top right of the board. And I wrote 9.8s on all of these, since that's what I thought they would get. So the first thing that I noticed on these that were rejected is the left corner of each of these were damaged. And I'm trying to think about, I normally ship these books in a very specific Gemini, I call it like a flap box, but it's a very specific Gemini box that you can kind of fold over and tuck in and put a stack of about 15 or 16 comics in there. And there's a very consistent damage to each of these books. It's the actual corner of the bag and the board. They're smashed. Well, more than smashed. They're pretty heavily blunted. And then looking at the corners of each of the books close up, I can see that also the damage went through the bag, the board, and right on the corner of the comic itself. Now I'm just going to grab one of these randomly and also look here at the bottom corner. I imagine that somehow these 9.8s made it and these didn't, or they just randomly survived. But I don't know. I have to look at maybe how I packed these or something. I honestly don't know. But what I do know, this one is probably the worst. This is Feral #1. This was just the cover A. Yeah, I think it just slid around too much here in the bag and board, and you can see with the white board down here, if I push the comic all the way down, the board pretty much disappears, like even all the way through, like you can't see the board anymore. And so when that corner got damaged somehow, I don't know if the box got dropped. I have no idea. I'll never know because it got sent straight to CGC. So now this book is damaged. There's no way I would have sent this book in with that damage, but let me show you the other books that were rejected. Ultimate Spider-Man #1. This is just an open order variant. This is the David Marquez cover. This is not the 1 in 100, thank goodness. This is another copy of Harley Quinn #38, that super cool Sozomaika cover. I'm glad I sent 2 in and 1 did get a 9.8. Superman #10. Is this a book you would have sent in? I sent it in, and again, I think, I can tell too, when I send these books in, what I end up doing is I kind of show you, I will stagger the books too, where if I have 2 books that I'm going to place back to back, then I'll put one upside down so that the spines are on opposite sides so they don't have like some sort of crease, because remember, I'm not getting these books pressed. So that was something too that I didn't see at first glance. Some of the books have damage on the bottom corner, and then some of them are damaged, like this comic, on the top corner. And also the bag and boards, they're too loose. And so what I think I did on these, because there is consistency here, except for one, these were all books that I pre-ordered where I didn't replace the bag and board. I simply took the comic out. I noticed it was a 9.8. I wrote 9.8 on the back of the board. I put the comic back into the same bag and board and sent them out. I didn't rebag them using the BCW Silver Age bags and boards that I love to use. So there's something about these bags that were just a little bit more oversized that allowed the books to kind of slide around. It's the only thing that I can think of. And so, again, I have no evidence of this, but I'm just picturing the outer cardboard box getting smashed. A couple other books I sent in. I sent in another copy of Deadpool #1, the foil. Interesting. One got a 9.8, one didn't. And then the other one I decided to send in, this was a book that I picked up from Mile High Comics. I'll have to look at it again because I did think it was a 9.8 and it doesn't appear to be damaged, but I may send this one off for pressing and try it again. But this is Thor, God of Thunder #13. This is the photo variant featuring Chris Hemsworth as Thor. And some of these photo variants are collectible, but I got this for a really good deal at Mile High Comics, and it does have some value in a 9.8. This was the only one that was a little bit older that I sent in, still a modern, but the rest of these were books that I had pre-ordered, that as I was going through the pre-order, as I said, my process was don't replace the bag and board, just write the 9.8, put it in my stack for pre-screen, and send it off. And I think that was a huge mistake. So the things that I learned, definitely rebag with my own bags and boards, and then also make sure that when I'm packing these books in that Gemini box that I use enough bubble wrap around the corners. I think that that's probably where I went wrong, where I just kind of put it on the edge. Weird though, like I'm just speculating. Very strange that these books were damaged and I didn't get a full or close to 15 books in a 9.8. I'm all fine if maybe I miss something on the book, but the fact that these were damaged at some point, I would certainly not send them in this grade. I wouldn't send even a bag and board that had that sort of damage on the outer bag and what I'm using to protect the book. I wouldn't send that as damaged. I feel like it's like if you take a dirty car to a mechanic, they can tell right away that this person doesn't really take care of their vehicle. So why should I put in any extra effort to fix a problem? I feel the same way. Like I wouldn't really send mishandled bags and boards to CGC because they're like, well, there's no way I'm going to give this book a 9.8 because they're using cheap storage. Anyway, I am just kind of speculating on what happened. I don't have any photo evidence. I could reach out to CGC and let them know I sent all these books in for a pre-screen, and it looks like they're damaged and don't understand. I'm not sure what they would say. I don't think they photograph the actual packaging or anything of that nature. Just unfortunate. This was just a bad luck, a hard luck experience. Very happy with the 9 that I did get graded. Absolutely. That's why I sent them in. So, yeah, just a few questions for you. Would you have sent these books in? Are there reasons why you wouldn't? I'd love to hear your feedback on that. And then also, in terms of getting rejected books back from Prescreen, where it clearly the books were damaged at some point or damaged in transit. I mean, I feel like there's really nothing I can do at this point. So if you have any other ideas, feel free to leave a comment and let me know. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.